dream broke, but it's clear now. No handouts, had to get down. Now what they fear now. No money millionaire, we here now. Got scars, but I wear that crown. Turn pain to a real account. No money, no excuses, no limits.
Welcome back to the No Money Millionaire podcast. This is where we break down the mindset, the money, the mastery, and the movement required to build wealth from nothing. I'm Dave Webb, your No Money Millionaire. And today's guest is Marty Fahncke. Is a world-class marketer with over 30 years of experience scaling businesses past the $1 billion mark. And he's executed almost $500 million in M&A transactions. He's been the #1 most listened to episode on multiple shows. And today we're going to dig into what business owners completely misunderstand about growth, value, and exits. Marty, I appreciate you being here. For anyone,
Dave, I'm really excited to be here. I am looking forward to talking, having this conversation.
Excellent. Why don't you take a second and introduce yourself the way that you would?
Yeah, sure. So, as it relates to your topic, No Money Millionaire, I was, my story is not too dissimilar to yours. Grew up without any money and made a goal when I was getting older, said, I want to be a millionaire. That was back when being a millionaire actually meant something, of course. Sure. And accomplished that goal at age 31. And primarily through business buying and selling, mergers and acquisitions. Although, and when it's small businesses, it's not, you think of mergers and acquisitions being like big businesses like banks and airlines and things like that. But, and I've been doing that for now over 25 years, and I love helping others do the same. And so I'm really excited about our topic today.
So am I. I'm looking forward to hearing it too. So most of my audience consists of people who either own a business or plan to. They have no idea when they should even be thinking about selling. So you said something most business owners don't even think is possible. You teach companies how to double revenue without selling more stuff. Break that down for us. What does that actually mean?
Yeah, happy to do so. So let's say you have a business, whether you're a plumber, whether you've got a retail store, whether you've got a marketing agency, print shop, whatever. You got a business. Let's say you're doing $500,000 a year in revenue, and you say to yourself, to get where I need to be, to hit my financial goals, to be where I need to be in life, I really want my business to be doing $1 million a year. Most business owners then look around and go, okay, how do I get there? Well, I got to sell more stuff, right? I've got to advertise more, or I've got to hire more salespeople, or I've got to do more promotions, or I've got to do something to maximize my revenue and maximize my profits. The problem is that's really difficult to do. And, if it was easy to double your business, everybody would just do it all the time. And the reality is it rarely ever happens, because what happens is you go out, you spend money on a big ad campaign. What if it doesn't work? You hire a new salesperson. What if they don't work out? And you're taking a lot of risk and a lot of gambles. And so businesses that try to accelerate their growth organically quite often wind up actually suffering rather than succeeding. Okay. But there is a way of doing it that minimizes your risks and maximizes your opportunities, and that is growing through acquisition. So let's say you have I mentioned something about a print shop. We actually did a deal like this a couple years ago in Oregon. So I had a business. It was a print shop. They made like signs and banners, and they did commercial printing, things like that, doing about $500,000 a year. Rather than try and advertise and promote and sell their way to growing to $1 million, we helped them acquire the other competitive print shop in the town. Now what happens? They're about the same size. They're about $500,000. Instantly, you put those two businesses together. Now you have $1 million business. You've eliminated a competitor. You've brought on their customer base. You've brought on their revenue stream. You've brought on their tried and true processes and procedures. You've brought on their proven employees. And so the risk is very minimized because everything there already works. And you put the two together and it works really, really well. I learned this model about 20 years ago. I had a business. We were doing about $1.5 million a year in revenue. It was an e-commerce business. I had a competitor that was pretty fierce competitor. We were duking it out and we were battling in a number of ways. And my division was part of a larger company, my e-commerce division. I had gone to our CEO and I'm like, yeah, there's this other competitor and they're kind of a pain in my butt. And he said, why don't you buy him? I was like, I don't know. I hadn't even thought about that. And he goes, call them up, see if they're for sale. Okay. So I called them up and I said, hey, you know who I am. I know who you are. We're always button heads. Would you be open to selling your business? He's like, yeah, I'd be open to it. Conversation started. Long story short, we acquired his business. Now, his business was doing about $2 million a year.
Okay.
My business was doing about $1.5 million a year. We bought their business. We merged the two together. And 2 years later, what do you think our revenues were? Took a $2 million business and a $1.5 million business, put them together, and 2 years later, what do you think the revenues were? $30 million.
I never would have guessed that. No.
$30 million. Why?
Wow. Yeah, why?
Because I had eliminated a competitor out of the marketplace.
Okay.
I could spend less money to acquire customers because I wasn't competing with him. His team was really phenomenal at certain things. My team was really phenomenal at certain things. Luckily, they meshed and grooved perfectly, and we were able to grow and accelerate the business to $30 million in 2 years. In that case, 1 and 1 doesn't make 2. 1 and 1 made 11.
Right.
And that is what any business owner can do with their business is look around. Who can you acquire? Is it your competitor? Is it your supplier? Who do you buy products and services from that if you owned them, you'd be paying yourself for those products and services? Is it somebody you sell to right now? Somebody in your customer base may be a perfect business for you to acquire. And again, you can own that supply chain. What if you acquire both? What if you buy the business you buy most of your products and services from? And what if you buy the businesses you sell them to and you have an entire supply chain that you own the entire thing and you're doing business with yourself? That is leverage. That is how you can turn a small business into a multi-million-dollar enterprise very quickly.
Interesting. I had invested in a retail store before it was eventually purchased by the parent corp of Circle K.
Okay.
And, they were just focused on just getting their revenue up, Never did it ever come across the table like, well, we should buy one. It never even came up. It was just only focused on raising their revenue. Mm-hmm. How can we get more customers in? Can we advertise, like you said? Can we do this? Can we do that? Never once did it come up, let's buy a competitor. That wasn't even on the table.
Yeah. So if that convenience store, instead of just trying to maximize that one and grow it beyond, the reality is a convenience store is it has a finite geography, it has a finite customer base. You're only going to grow it so far. Mm-hmm. It's got a finite amount of square footage of real estate. Like once you've hit a ceiling on that, you're not going to grow it anymore. Right? So go buy another one down the road and then the other one down the road. And when Circle K comes calling, how much do you think they value one convenience store versus a chain of 5 or 10 convenience stores on a multiple basis? Now you're talking real leverage here.
Yeah, of course. Wow. Interesting. So where do you think most owners sabotage themselves or hold themselves back?
So there's 2 areas where they sabotage themselves in this concept. Number one is they don't even realize this can be done. They hear mergers and acquisitions and they think, airlines and, big businesses and things like that. The reality is mergers and acquisitions happen on every spectrum of size of business. And so you need to think about that you can do it. It doesn't matter what your business is, this can be done. So you are doing a big service to your listeners right now by at least sparking that idea. I've given this talk to, literally hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs now around the world. And when I do it live and in person, I love to watch the light bulb. I ding, and they go, oh my gosh, this is, wow, I never thought of this. Yeah. But, so just by talking about the fact that it's possible is helping people right now overcome one big mistake. The second big mistake that business owners make in this thought process is they think, well, wait a minute, how am I going to go buy that $500,000 business? I don't have $500,000.
Exactly.
You don't need $500,000 to go buy a $500,000 business. There are ways to leverage that acquisition so that it could be as little as no money, right? The topic of your podcast is No Money Millionaire. Well, Marty, how do we do this for no money? I'm going to tell you, Dave.
Please do.
So there's a number of different ways to do it. We have on our team, we have over 230 different ways of funding an acquisition. But I'm going to give you just a couple of really quick and easy ones that are kind of standard. So number one, the SBA. If you're in the United States, the SBA has what's called the SBA 7A expansion loan, which let's say you're a general contractor and you need to go out and buy some new tractors and backhoes to expand your business. The SBA says, okay, great. Your business looks good. We're going to give you some money to go do that. Buying a competitive business is the same thing as an expansion loan. They can treat that the same way. So one retail store buying another retail store or a convenience store, they look at it and say, yep, that's a convenience store. It's the same thing. You got some real estate attached to it. That's an expansion loan. They will give you that money free. There is no down payment required whatsoever for that because it's considered an expansion of your current business, not even an acquisition necessarily. So that's one way. That's the SBA.
Okay.
Another way, let's say that it's not a direct competitor of the exact same type of business. Let's say you follow my advice and you buy your supplier or you buy one of your customers.
Sure.
Well, guess what? You can still get an SBA 7A loan. You just have to come up with 10% down. Okay, great. So $500,000 acquisition, you got to come up with $50,000. Well, where do I come up with $50,000? Well, guess what? You can do it a couple different ways. You can borrow it from yourself. Many people don't realize that you can borrow against a 401k, not withdraw, borrow against a 401k. And so you're borrowing your own money from yourself and you're paying yourself favorable interest terms. And so that's something, and you can do that for up to $50,000. So borrow the money from yourself. Or another way is something that you like to talk about and how you did your very first no money down deal, which is other people's money, right? You asked your brother to go in and help you acquire the house. That was your first deal, right?
Exactly.
You can have somebody else inject that down payment. Say, hey, I've got this business. It's successful. We're doing really great. I want to grow it. We're going to double. This is what's going to happen. Would you like to come in and front the down payment for this? And you get a piece of the action. Many people will put up money for that. So that's third party cash injection or OPM or other people's money. The other thing is seller financing. The owner of the business that you are buying may finance a portion of the deal on a seller financing. 60% of small business acquisitions under $5 million have some form of seller financing involved in them. It's pretty standard and pretty normal that the seller will finance some portion of your transaction.
Okay.
So some seller financing, some OPM, some borrowing against your 401k. We have people who borrow against their home equity. They'll go out and get a HELOC on their house, borrow against their home equity. I've seen people put it on their credit cards, raising capital from third parties or called angel investors. Those are just a few of the ways. There's also funding options called RBF, revenue-based funding, that you can get a loan just against the revenue of the business itself. Okay. There's asset and inventory-based funding, meaning, well, this business, let's say it's the contractor business I mentioned with like tractors and backhoes and dump trucks. Those things, especially if they're paid off, they have value, right? You can go borrow against the ones that you're about to acquire. Somebody will say, sure, you've got a great big, tractor here worth $100,000 and we'll lend you $50,000 against that $100,000. Boom, there's your $50,000. So very simple, honestly, to be creative about how to acquire another business with no money out of your own pocket. Now, I don't want that to be confused with no money down. There is a difference, okay? Sure. Some people think, well, I'm going to go to this business. I'm going to say, I'm going to buy you, but I'm not giving you any money. That's almost impossible. And the reality is, if you have a seller, a business owner, and he's willing to sell you his business for no money down, I would probably be leery about why he's willing to do that. But what I'm saying is no money out of your pocket,
of course,
which is finding sources of funding in other ways to make the deal happen. That's when I love being involved in those kind of creative deals. So, number one, you can do this. Any business can do this, any business owner. Number two, the funding options to do it are limitless, and you can make it happen for no money. And now you've acquired a business, you've put no money out of your own pocket, you've doubled your revenues or tripled or whatever, you've doubled or tripled your profits, you've made your business bigger and stronger, you've eliminated potential competitors. It's all good.
Investorfy, the #1 lending source for first-time and early-stage investors. Just learned how to find your first deal? Let's get it funded. Investorfy, the only no-money millionaire certified lender. Find us at Investorfy Lending or visit our website at investorfylending.com. Investorfy, turning new investors into trained professionals. What are you waiting for? Schedule your free review today.
It's a lot of the similar with what, I talk about is it's no money, no money millionaire, no money method to buy property. But, obviously the money has to come from somewhere. No one's just going to give you property. And, I had somebody that used to work for me. She didn't get it. She didn't understand. And when I told her my book and it's no money millionaire, and she's like, it just doesn't make sense. No one's just going to give you their property. Well, I mean, yes, that's correct. But just like you, it doesn't have to come out of your pocket. And a lot of similar ways you just said with doing business as we do real estate, the based off revenue, we have those loans, OPM, other people's money, we have those. So a lot of similarities. And you think this is any size business can consider this?
Any size business. I don't care if it's a multi-billion-dollar business that you see in the headlines or if it's one lemonade stand buying that lemonade stand on the next block. It can be done.
What's the number one mistake owners make when they wait too long to do this?
I mean, just waiting to do it is the mistake, right? Like every day that you are sitting there with your business in the status quo is a day that you're leaving potential opportunity on the table, money on the table, growth on the table. Every day that you don't have this mindset, deals are. I got a text literally 2 minutes before we got on this recording from one of my clients who was looking at a deal. And he wasn't quite ready to execute the deal. Guess what? One of his competitors just bought another one of his competitors, and they just put a big splashy press release out about it. And he's like, dang it, I really should have done that deal. You waited. You hesitated. And now somebody else has got that revenue. Somebody else has got that profit, and somebody else is riding the PR wave from that. So the biggest mistake is not doing it. Like I said, it's very low risk. You're taking much less risk in doing an acquisition than you are in trying to grow organically and spending money blindly to do so. And so waiting is the biggest risk.
I find that, I've seen where I've helped somebody, and I tell a lot of people, I look for properties that's been on the market for a really long time. I'll go and a lot of people talk negatively about Zillow, finding properties on Zillow, but I go on there and I just scour for ones that's been on there a super long time, and then they're usually more open and receptive to hearing some creative deals. Well, I had somebody that I was coaching and teaching them to do it, and they found one. And they just kept stalling. They said, oh, it's been on the market this long. No one's interested. No one's going to do anything. And it was a lack of action. And by the time they went to do it, it was under contract. Mm-hmm. So, that waiting will get you for sure.
Yeah. Yep.
Most of my audience consists of people who either own a business or plan to. They have no idea when they should even think about selling. So when should an owner consider selling their business?
So an owner should begin thinking about selling their business today, and here's why.
Okay.
So even if so you have some owners who have a plan, right? I'm gonna run this business until I retire, or I'm gonna run this business until my kids take it over, or whatever else. Most business owners, however, don't have any kind of plan. They just like, I'm gonna run this business until I'm not gonna run it anymore. The problem comes in when life gets in the way. So we talk about the 5 Ds and a B. Okay, the 5 Ds and a B are death, disease, debt, divorce, disagreements, and then the B is burnout, and that's a big one. Business owners who do not plan to sell their business often find themselves in a position to having to sell their business, and when the business is not in sell-ready condition, they're leaving money on the table in a big, big way. So the benefit of always be thinking about, what would happen if I had to sell my business today is, number one, if something does happen, if you do get sick, if, a divorce, any of those 5 Ds and a B comes along, and you decide, you know what? I'm selling, but it's fine. My business is in great shape. I will have buyers lined up to throw money at me for this business. then you're at least in a better place. The other thing is, if your business is in sell-ready condition, which means it's operating smoothly, it probably has a written and documented business operating system, the financials are organized and clean and clear, the team is running effectively, and the business runs well without you having to be involved every single day.
Sure.
That's a business that buyers want to buy. If your business looks like that, then you as the current owner have a much better business. It's a business that you're going to enjoy running and operating. It's going to be more profitable, and it's going to be less stress. So if you look at a business and say, what would a new owner want to see? And you operate that business as if you're the new owner, it's going to be a much better business. You do a lot of real estate, right? So let's say you live in a house and it's kind of, you've lived there 10 years and you haven't done any upkeep, right? The paint's starting to flake and the landscaping's got weeds in it and there's cracks in the foundation and everything else. And you just you forget, I just kind of live here. It's no big deal. And then all of a sudden something happens and you got to sell the house. Well, then your real estate agent comes like, well, you've got to paint here and you got to fix this foundation and you've got to, all this stuff you have to do, right? You have to stage your house for sale.
Sure.
Well, I've seen instances where people decide to sell their house. They do all the things needed to get their house ready to sell. And then they look around and go, yeah, this place isn't half bad now. I'm going to stay. And they decide not to sell their house. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah.
I've seen it.
Yeah.
I've seen the same thing with businesses. I've talked to business owners who are like, I'm sick and tired. I'm burned out. I just want to get rid of my business. And then we say, okay, well, here's what you need to do to get your business ready to sell. And they do all the things and they go, well, all of a sudden I'm working half as hard and making twice as much money. I don't know how that happened. It's like, because you've cleaned up all the mess and now it's a good, strong business again that a buyer would want to buy. So do you still want to sell or do you want to keep it? So that's why you should always have your business in sell-ready condition. It makes it a better business for you to own. And if you ever have to sell it or want to sell it, then you're going to get maximum dollar when you do sell it.
So do you think selling is only for somebody who's finished and ready to retire? Or do you also see it as like a growth strategy?
No. We work with both with that type of owner. They've had a business 20 years, they're ready to retire. But we work with a lot of younger entrepreneurs and business owners who built a business. I'm a perfect example. I have built multiple businesses up to about $30 million. Once I crossed 30 million, I've hit 80 million and I've hit 600 million. Once I hit 30 million, though, I don't like it as much. It gets too big. The team gets too big, a little more red tape, a little more. And so I have learned that my sweet spot in a business is 1 million to 30 million. I can grow a business from 1 million to 30 million all day long. Okay. I've done it multiple times. What I don't like is the 0 to 1 million. Okay. And I don't like the 30 to 100 million, right? Sure. So I know that if I buy a business that somebody's done all the hard work and blood, sweat, and tears of getting it started, making that first $1 million, right? Mm-hmm. If they've done that, I can take that business and I can turn it into a $30 million business. And then what am I going to do? I'm going to sell it to somebody that's going to turn it into a $100 million business. We have a lot of clients who work with us who've built built businesses over and over to a $2, $3, $4 million business over a couple of years, and then they sell it, and then they take the proceeds and they roll it into the next one. We have some that are on their third iteration with us of selling their business that they've started from scratch and built it to $2 or $3 or $4 million business, and they go on and do it again. Younger entrepreneurs, especially in software, tech, things like that, hardware, consumer products, come up with a great idea, execute, generate some income, and then it becomes a sellable business. Take that capital and go do it again. We have a lot of clients who do that as well.
Interesting. The instance that I was talking about, you said if I seen it where somebody didn't take care of it was an apartment complex, and they let it get ran down, a lot of deferred maintenance, and they were looking to sell it. And after they did everything to bring it back up, they were like, well, man, I could bring my rents up, I could do this, and it could get cash flowing a lot more. And they did. They had it and got comfortable and was just letting it stay on autopilot. But when it came up, I think somebody propositioned them to sell it.
Right.
And so at that point, their offer was low. And the person was like, man, that building is worth more than that. But it took them to do it. They didn't want to sell it low. So they wanted to get the value. So they did do the painting, the maintenance, the value add, and then they were like, wow, so I'm undercharging in my rents. I can bring my rents up, all of that. So that's where I saw it. Somebody with an apartment complex.
Yeah, perfect example. And we see the same thing in businesses. Business owner kind of gets complacent and they just kind of running it on autopilot and things start slipping through the cracks and whatever else. And then, like I said, either they decide to sell because they want to, or something forces them to sell, and it's not an optimal position. So that's why we advise always keep your business in sell ready condition no matter what.
So if somebody they haven't done anything yet, what's a first step someone should do looking at their business, or what they should do right now if they haven't done anything?
So if they haven't done anything, the first thing they should do is, not to be self-promotional, but I do have a book that they can check out that has kind of everything step by step. It's called Boomer Sells the Business. Don't let the title fool you, by the way. It's good for any generation. Boomer Sells the Business, a step-by-step guide to cashing out and living large. It's a bestseller on Amazon. And it has all the step-by-step what you should do to get your business ready to sell, even if you never plan to sell it. And that's a great place to start. But just touching on a couple of things, cleaning up your financials, making sure they're accurate, making sure they're timely, making sure they're organized. Shocking number of business owners, that's a big area of concern. Having a business operating system, and when I say an operating system, I'm not talking about software. Okay. An operating system is a written, documented process to run your business. So, for example, if you go and decide to buy a McDonald's franchise, right? You put your $5 million down for a McDonald's franchise. When you become a McDonald's franchisee, they give you these huge operating systems that has everything from how you buy the real estate to what the building has to look like, to how to hire the people, to how to train the people, to how to flip the burgers, to how much lettuce to put on a Big Mac. Every single thing at a McDonald's franchise is documented, and they say this is how you do it. That is an operating system. Your business should have an operating system. It maybe doesn't have to be quite as comprehensive as McDonald's has, but probably should be pretty close. So that, and the thing about that is what that does is it allows you as the owner to step away from operating the business without having to be the central person or the bottleneck that makes every single decision and teaches every person how to do everything. If you as the business owner are doing everything in the business, you don't really have a business. You have a job.
Right.
And you can't sell a job. You have to have a business. So you need to have the operating system which builds a business that the team can operate so that you as the owner do not have to be involved in the day-to-day operations. And that is a business that has a substantial amount of value if you ever want to sell it. So those are the steps. Clean up your financials, get an operating system in place, and remove yourself from the day-to-day operations of the business. And then you've got a business that'll sell.
That was one of the things that aided the sale of the convenience stores that I was invested in. Is the woman who really handled that was the owner of that store. She had it was a set program, how everything ran from opening to closing to everything in between.
Perfect.
And that, I think, aided her greatly.
Without question.
Yeah.
Without question. That's what new owners are looking for, business buyers are looking for. Is, do you have everything documented in your processes and procedures? Do you have a system in place? And that's called a business operating system. And there are off-the-shelf business operating systems out there. There's EOS and there's eMyth, and there's kind of ones you can, and then there's some people that just do it organically, right? They just literally get out a binder and start writing or whatever it looks like. And so, but it's important that you have that for your business.
Yeah, it was a binder, and from greeting the customer when they came in to every aspect of stocking, everything. And so
when Circle K came calling, her business was ready to be sold.
Yeah.
And she got a premium price for it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It did really well. Yeah.
And that's really well. And the difference between that is a convenience store who the owner is there day in and day out. They are the business. There's no processes and procedures written down because it's all in their head. And if something happens to them, the business starts deteriorating. If Circle K comes calling to them, they're going to go, never mind. We'd rather just go build a new one down the road than try and take this one on. And that's the difference. It's a perfect example.
So have you seen deals fall apart because owners didn't think ahead?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. We've seen time and time again. It's funny. You were talking about the apartment complex where a potential buyer just called them out of the blue and said, "Hey, would you like to sell this apartment building?" Same thing happens with businesses. There are people out there looking to acquire businesses, whether it's as their first business or whether it's as an expansion of their current business, because they heard me on a podcast and went, "That's a great idea." So then they call a business and say, "Hey, I'm thinking about, I want to buy you. I'd be interested in acquiring your business." And I've seen those deals where they go, well, okay, I'd be open to it. But then they get into it. And because they haven't done those steps, okay, they go and just like your apartment complex example, they go, okay, well, now that I see your business and I see that it's a mess and I see that you're actively involved in every day-to-day decision and I'm going to have to replace you and pay somebody to do. So the value of your business is a fraction of what it would be. So they make the offer based on what its value. And then the current owner goes, well, that's not much money. And it's like, that's what it's worth because you didn't build a good business. I thought it was a good business from the outside. You had, some spit and polish, but now that I dig in, I realize it's not a good business, or, your financials are a complete disaster and you've got expenses here that don't make any sense and everything else. So I've seen lots of deals get tanked because they didn't do the steps needed to have their business ready to sell. And the worst thing I've seen is where people aren't honest about it. I've literally seen business owners who have faked their books. I mean, they literally, turned over a QuickBooks profit and loss statement and said, "This is my business." And then when we get into due diligence and we cross-reference it with bank account deposits and tax returns, it didn't add up. And, you're going to get caught when you do stuff like that. And, don't be dishonest. You're going to get caught. So, run a clean business and have integrity and run it right. And then good things will happen.
Yeah. I can only, I can relate some of what you said with the apartments, but I had a little experience with that convenience store. So I can understand, and relate with what you're saying. I had an apartment complex that I purchased, and it had an empty commercial unit down on the downstairs. Downstairs was 4 commercial, upstairs was all residential.
Right.
And the commercial was empty. My partner and I at the time, we were like, well, let's put something in there. And they were like, you did good with that convenience store you invested in. Maybe a convenience store would go well here. Maybe it might have, but it was just, I learned it wasn't my zone. It wasn't my zone. And it was, you had to get all of these, because I couldn't be there. I'm doing real estate. I'm doing other things. The partner was out of the state, so he wasn't hands-on. And if you don't have that program in place where it can just operate without you, without any questions, it's a mess.
Yep. And that operating system is very critical.
I ended up closing the store. I was just like, it's not for me. It's just not for me. Even though I invested in one, it did well. I realized this isn't for me. So
you could have called the person who owned the other place that you had invested in and said, "Hey, that binder? Can I just get a copy of that? Because that's what you really needed, right?"
Yeah. Well, I really needed her. I needed her. Just come take this over, please. Yeah. But no, she wasn't able. So I closed it. And I had plans.
By the way, that actually reminds me of another something I should talk about, which is the concept of consulting for equity. So, how can you get into a business and acquire a business for no money out of your pocket, right?
Yeah.
If you have a particular area of expertise and a business needs that area of expertise, you might consider, instead of taking cash in exchange for those services, is taking equity. And this is something people do not think about very often.
Okay.
But there are times when you can negotiate and say, you know what, instead of taking cash for this deal, I've got something that will, I can get your convenience store up and running and turn it into a great thing. But instead of just being paid up front for that, which you probably didn't want to pay a lot of money up front for it anyway, because it was a big risk, right? But if they took if this person would have come on board and said, sure, I'll take it, and I'll take 15% equity in the store, right? And that way later on, when Circle K comes calling again, I've got a great big payday, right? Consulting for equity is a way of getting equity in businesses and acquiring partial acquisitions using your expertise or resources versus cash. And it's another way to get into a business with no money, and it's something that should be thought about and considered.
Sure. That store, we didn't have that. The bar wasn't set so high for us with the store. We were happy if it paid for itself and just paid the rent. And then we
Right.
didn't have the empty unit, and it was
Right.
great. And without that program in place, it made it too much work. It was just too much work because it wasn't set and established already, and things just didn't flow the way it should. So I recognized, and it just became too much work for me to be able to keep it going, because really that operating system, and I had seen a store that did well, and I remember everything was in place. I mean, everything was in place, and I just didn't have the time, and without having the time to set the system in place, then it wasn't running right. And and I looked for somebody. I'd have loved if someone came in and been able to take it over and do it and just pay us the rent. And so yeah, it was a shame. That's how it went. But let's talk about, everybody always has the magic question: what's my business worth? But I think most people, they don't even have a clue how valuation actually works.
That's true. And the reason they don't have a clue how valuation works on a business is because it's really complicated. It is much different than real estate. So like, residential real estate, things like that, you're able to run comps, and you're able to fairly say, well, there's, 5 other places that have sold in this square footage. And so you can get a fairly, this is what it's worth, and the bank will lend you this much money. With commercial real estate, obviously it's based on cash flow and the value of the property. So it gets a little more complicated. With businesses, it can get, there's infinite numbers of ways of factoring valuation, right? So, big high ticket tech businesses, software, things like that, they're done on a multiple of revenue. And the problem is business owners of more Main Street businesses think, oh, I'm valued on a multiple of revenue, which is absolutely not true. So to simplify it, even though there's 50 different ways of calculating value of a business, to simplify it for your listeners, I'm going to say it's based on a multiple of profit.
Okay.
And this is something people don't think about enough, is that you could be doing $1 million a year in revenue, and if you have no profit, it's a completely different value than if you're doing $1 million a year in revenue with $150,000 in profit. One might be worth nothing, or it might be worth, a couple $100,000, and the other one might be worth millions, even though they do the same revenue, right? So profit is the number one thing you want to look at with regard to business valuations. And then every business sector, and we actually run it right down to the NAICS code that you put on your tax returns, your business categorization code, has research we can do and find out exactly how much businesses, to get your comps, right? Exactly what multiple businesses are trading for on a range, a low or high. And businesses can sell sometimes for as low as a 0.5 of profit, and as high as a 25, right, of profit. It just depends on a number of factors in the strength of the business categorization, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the best way to get a valuation is to contact a business broker or a mergers and acquisitions advisor and get an evaluation and find out, what is my business worth. And make sure you ask for a market valuation, because there's 2 different kinds of valuations of the business: book value and market value, right? So similar to if you you go out and buy a very high-end piece of jewelry, and it's $1 million piece of $1 million diamond ring, right? Then you take it to the appraiser and you say, I need this appraised for insurance purposes, and the appraiser says it's $1 million, and then insurance insures it for $1 million. But if you ever have to sell that diamond ring, do you think you're going to get $1 million for it? No, you're not. You might get $100,000 for it. You might get $300,000 for it. Who knows what you're going to get? You're not going to get $1 million. Similar with a business. There are businesses, if you go to your accountant and say, what's my business worth? They're going to give you a book value, but that may have no reality to what the market will actually pay for the business. So you want a market value. What's the market going to pay for a particular business? I'll touch on something else really quick too. A problem we see, a big mistake business owners make, is they focus on, especially if they know they're going to sell in the next couple of years, is business owners, everybody wants to pay less taxes, right? So they're in a tax mitigation strategy. So like, look, I've got this business. It does $1 million a year, but I've made it all work from a tax manipulation strategy. So I show zero profits. So I'm not paying any taxes.
Right.
Well, what did we just learn businesses are valued on?
Yes. Your profit.
Well, what did they just do to themselves?
Yeah.
And so let's say they're in a category where businesses are selling for 5x of profit. Okay. Well, that means if they saved $1 on profit in order to save 20 cents in taxes,
right,
they just gave up $5 in business valuation.
Wow.
Is that a smart move?
Yeah. No, not at all.
It's not.
No.
And people do not think of this. And you have to start 3 years before you're ready to sell, because most valuations are done on a 3-year look back. So if you know you're going to sell your business in the next 3 years, you need to call your accountant and say, immediately shift me from tax mitigation to profit maximization, please. Make decisions based on maximizing profit, not minimizing taxes, because that will kill you. And I've seen that time and time again. Big mistake that people make.
I mean, I've seen it with people, small business owners. They want to, pay as little tax as possible, and they want to do everything they can to show that they're not making any money. And yeah, wow, that hit that.
And now their business is worth nothing because it's not profitable.
Wow. Wow.
And then they come to us and like, but really it's making, well, okay, are you going to lie to the buyer or you're lying to the IRS? Which one is it?
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
And again, this is where, and that one toes the line in like, where do you stand with, like, if you know, or you're confident you're going to keep your business for 20 years.
Sure.
And I talked about keeping it in sell-ready condition. Okay, maybe you got to balance that out. Maybe you don't want to do a full profit maximization and give up on saving taxes, because who wants to pay more than they have to? But you need to consider that if you know you're going to sell in a certain time frame, you need to be shifting that focus. It's very, very important.
Well, it sounds like some of the things that we've covered today, you just don't know. You just don't know if it's going to be that time to sell. And so, it's hard to have that 3-year planning, when anything can happen and you want the most value for your business at any particular point of time. So it sounds like it's a tough decision not to pay the tax, but it sounds like it might just be the decision to do.
Could be. In the meantime, do all of the other things that we talked about with regarding to an operating system and
of course,
getting yourself out of the business, keeping your financials clean. I'm going to make one more warning, by the way, that's related to this. If you have a business right now and it's not doing well, if you got it's headaches every single day and you're having a problem with employee retention or client retention, or it's a nightmare every single day.
My convenience store.
Buying another business is not your solution.
Okay.
All you're going to do is double your headache.
Sure.
The idea of acquiring another business to grow your current business should only be done when your current business is running smoothly and solidly and is a good firm foundation for that new business to go on top of. If your business is a mess, don't go buy another one, because then you're just going to have 2 messes.
So my partner and I, that was on that one property we did the convenience store, we had secured another location that we planned to open another store in. Mm-hmm. And I was trying to buy it from the owner. We weren't coming to an agreed amount for the property, but that wasn't what was stopping us. We were going to continue and lease the property and do it. But the first thing I told my partner was, I'm letting that property go. I said, I'm not going to do another store there. And he's from out of state. He's like, why? I mean, it seems like it'd be a great idea. I said, yeah.
That was smart. You knew the one wasn't running great, so why buy it? Why double down on a bad idea, right?
Exactly. And so after the first one fell, I told him, I said, listen, I'm closing the store too. I just can't do it. It's not my thing. I renovate my own properties. I manage my own properties, and so I'm doing all that. I'm renovating this unit all day to day, but then after that, then I have to go and I have to get inventory, and and sometimes I have to wake up because it was an hour and a half away from where I live, so I'd have to wake up at 4 a.m. to drive out there to take the product, then to start my day after I just did a 4-hour drive, and I was just like, this is not my thing. And I had to I learned real quick that this was not for me. And so,
Yeah, smart.
no, I definitely, the way that one was running, I definitely could not do a second one. And I knew it. I was like, I am not adding this to my plate. Absolutely not. Absolutely
Good.
not.
Yep.
So how early should an owner start removing themselves from the day-to-day?
As soon as possible. So
Okay.
we talk about multiple exits of a business. And so most people think, well, if I'm going to exit my business, that means I'm selling it and leaving. And that's not actually true. We talk about, exit number one should be exiting the front line, meaning, let's say you're a plumber, right? If you're a plumber and you go out and you're the one fixing pipes and turning wrenches, you're on the front line, okay? So the first exit you should look at is, how do I hire more plumbers so that I'm coaching and mentoring those plumbers, but I'm not out there doing all the plumbing all the time, right? You probably still are doing some jobs, but you've got a couple of other plumbers that are out there doing work for you. You're leveraging, right?
Sure.
You're working your way out the front line. So that's exiting the front line is number one. Next, but you're still managing, you're still very deeply involved in the business. Maybe you've got somebody that's handling the dispatching, you got somebody that's handling all your, ordering and everything else. You're still managing the business. So the next exit is exiting the management, right? Exiting the day-to-day management. So now you've got all the plumbers out there doing their work. You're not out turning wrenches anymore, but you're still running the business on a day-to-day. You want to exit that management. And then so then that means probably you're going to hire a general manager to take your place eventually, right?
Sure.
And now you own the business, but you are completely hands-free from the business. And so that's so you got exit the front line, exit management, and then you have the freedom to decide, hey, the business runs on its own. Everything's great. I come in, once a week and just kind of give a rah-rah, or I'm doing higher level strategic, or probably acquiring other plumbing businesses and building it all together and building a plumbing empire, right? Or you can just run it and cash the checks, right? It's running smoothly. You have operating systems in place, so all decisions are documented. You don't have to be the guy they call every time there's a problem. And then there's exiting the actual business, which means selling it to somebody else or giving it to somebody else if it's a family member or something like that. So there's a couple of different types of exits. You should be thinking day one about how to do that first exit. How do I get myself off the front line and into management only? And that might take a couple of years. It might take 2, 3, 5, 6 years, right?
Okay.
Now I'm the manager. I'm not out turning wrenches anymore, but I'm still operating the business. It's still stressful. I've still got a lot happening. I'm still day-to-day involved, working 60 hours a week. How do I put other people in place to do that? There's a really great book I could recommend, by the way, called Who Not How, by Dan Sullivan and another author. I can't remember his name. He's the main author, but Who Not How, really great book. I recommend all entrepreneurs and business owners read that book, because it talks about when something needs to be done, are you the person that's like, well, how do I get this done? And they try and figure it out. Or if you're leveraging properly and being smart about it, you don't ever go, how do I do that? You go, who can do this better than anybody? Bring them on and let them do it. And so that's how you work your way out of management of the business and then eventually exiting the whole business. So start from day one thinking about those layers of exit and how you can achieve that for yourself.
Do you find people who that's in that position? They're a owner operator, and they see their business is worth X and they're making this much money. But then when they look and they're like, okay, I need to start putting these other pieces in place. But now does that start, tearing up their bottom line and their profit? That was what the value was?
It may or may not. If done right, it won't, right? So let's say you've got a business doing $1 million a year in revenue and it's owner operated, and let's go smaller. Okay. Actually, I just had this situation happen with a plumber, crazy enough. It was a widow called me up and said, hey, my husband just died. He's a plumber. He told me that he had heard that the plumbing businesses were worth 3 times their revenue.
Okay.
And he did $500,000 last year. So that means his business is worth $1.5 million. Can you please help me sell his business for $1.5 million? Because he just died and didn't have enough life insurance. And I said, tell me about his business. And she said, well, it's him in a truck going and doing plumbing jobs.
Okay.
And I said, that's not a business. That was a job. First of all, businesses of that size are not valued on revenue. They're valued on profit. Second of all, the business was him. He was the business. His license was the business. There is no business. The value of this business right now is about 20 grand, which is, a 10-year-old van and a bunch of tools.
Wow.
That's it. So that's the ultimate owner operator, right? There, that is the business. That business has no value. Okay. You can't sell that business because it's a person, right?
Yeah.
Now let's go out to the plumber who's hired 2 or 3 plumbers, and they've got people going out and stuff. They're doing stuff. Okay, it's doing $1 million a year, and the owner's bringing home $100,000 a year, but he's actively involved day to day. Okay.
Yeah.
That business might be worth 2 or 3x profit, so it might be worth $200,000 or $300,000. Okay. If that owner can train a general manager to operate that business, and let's say that general manager's makes $75,000 a year. Okay.
Yeah.
Now there's only $25,000 left in profit.
Right.
But guess what? That owner now is freed up to go and acquire a second $1 million plumbing business and put the two together. And now you've got a $2 million business, and you only need one general manager for both of them. So now you just picked up the other $100,000 in profit from over there, right?
Okay.
So now you got $170,000 or $125,000 in profit at the end of the day. And that business just became a 5x value business. So now you have a business worth $675,000. It just jumped jumped up exponentially, right?
Yeah.
You're paying somebody a portion of the profit, but because you are backing out as an owner operator and turning it into an absentee owner business, the multiple valuation jumps exponentially. Mm-hmm. So it's okay. Again, you have to know though, am I building this to grow and sell, or am I building this for the long term? But either way, you as the owner are still better off, right? Because you're not having to do that day to day. And the business will grow if you're able to be more strategic. And let's say you don't go acquire. Let's say you just use that time to go out and work the Chamber of Commerce events and go work with general contractors and grow the business. And you're going to grow the business because you've got time to go out there and build relationships and grow the business without having to manage all the plumbers, because you've hired somebody to manage all the plumbers. So either way, you're going to grow the business and make it more valuable.
So that covers one of my questions. It was like, what makes a business a good acquisition target? And I think it's a bunch of the things that you just said that it can.
Yeah, everything we've just talked about. Yeah.
So how can someone with limited cash or credit, the people that I find a lot in my audience that I'm speaking to, I tell them that that they can do it no matter where their savings are or their credit. So how can someone in that similar position still play in this world that you're talking about?
So if you're talking about somebody that already owns a business, I think we've really covered that. If you're talking about somebody who aspires to buy a business, if you have bad credit and no money, honestly, it's going to be really tough. There are gurus out there who sell programs that kind of tell you how to do it. It can be done, but it's very, very difficult.
Sure.
Because you either need some cash or some credit. Because now, however, you can leverage somebody else's cash or leverage somebody else's credit. You can bring in, you can bring in a partner. You're probably going to need a partner, just like you did with your first acquisition, right? You had crappy credit. Your brother had, but your brother didn't, right? So you brought your brother in,
exactly,
right? So you leveraged other people's money with seller finance or seller equity, because your dad gave you some equity.
Exactly.
You leveraged OPM, which is other people's money, which your brother chipped in 10 grand to the equity, and you were leveraging his credit rating because your credit sucked. I got the story right?
You got it right.
Okay. You can do the exact same thing for a business. You're going to have to leverage somebody else. That's probably not a deal you're going to be able to walk into and do by yourself. You're going to need help. You're going to need some partners. So either bringing cash to the table, bringing equity to the table, or bringing credit rating to the table so that they can secure the debt. And then it can be done. But there are ways of securing debt, and I touched on some of those without any kind of credit rating. Asset-based financing doesn't have anything to do with credit rating, because it's basically liens against equipment and real estate, or revenue-based financing it's a future lien against future revenue. And so credit ratings don't matter as much there. So there are other ways of doing it. But the best way is going to be to find somebody who has either cash or credit or both, and partnering up with them, and then it just makes life a lot easier.
That's the same way with what I talk. That aligns with, with what I talk about with the no money method and stuff. I mean, it takes the standard pieces. You have to have A, B to get C. Now, how you come up with those, how creative you can structure that, relying with other people with credit, like I did with my brother, or, somehow bringing in OPM to bring in the deposit that you need or the down payment that you need. It completely aligns with what I say too. It's a no money method, but there's money involved and there's a method to make it happen. And so it's just getting the right pieces. So
absolutely.
If there's one thing a business owner should do the moment this episode ends, what is it?
Start thinking about the future, whether it's how to grow your business through acquisitions, or whether it's what your business looks like when you're ready to move on. Start thinking about the future and making plans, and don't bury your head in the sand that nothing's ever going to change, because there's one constant in the world, and that is change. And so you need to be ahead of it and not caught unprepared.
I had another guest on a previous show, and he had a statement. He said, are you prepared for what happens when what happens actually happens? Mm-hmm. And that was his line. And
It's a good line.
It is. He said, are you prepared for what happens when what happens actually happens?
And I will tell you, in my experience in doing this for over 25 years, 95% of business owners, the answer is no.
Yeah. And it sounds like it's important for the value of the business, for the operation of the business, for absolutely every aspect.
Yeah.
Where should people go to connect with you to get that free, no obligation valuation you offer?
Yeah, so I'm really easy to find. My name is Marty Fahncke. I'm the only Marty Fahncke in the entire world. So you can track me down pretty easy. I'm very active on LinkedIn, or you can go to my website at westboundroad.com. And then you can also check out my book at boomersellsthebusiness.com, and you can contact me through any of those resources. And like I said, if you Google me, you'll find lots and lots of hits, and they're all me because I can't hide. And I'm very proud of the fact that of the thousands of things that'll come up, they're all positive. So I try to do a great job for my clients and the people I work with.
That's awesome. And to be the only one of, that's pretty amazing.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah, that's excellent. So perfect for everyone's listening now. If you own a business and you don't know what it's worth, that's like walking around with a winning lottery ticket and never scratching it. So Marty, I appreciate you being here. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
You're very welcome.
Turn pain to a real account. No money, no excuses, no limits loud. And I want a millionaire, we here now. Used to dream broke, but it's clear.